Why is this so hard for me? Why am I so awkward when I speak? Why does everyone around me sound so much more confident? If you've ever asked yourself these questions, then today's episode is for you. In today's episode, I'm going to help you figure out exactly what's been getting in the way of you speaking up with confidence, and together, we will map out the exact next steps you need to build a confident voice that gets you heard, respected, and recognized. Let's dive in. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we are talking about some of the big obstacles that get in the way of you having a confident, effective voice in the workplace. If you find yourself struggling to communicate with confidence, maybe you stay quiet in meetings, even when you have something that you want to contribute. Maybe you find it difficult to articulate your ideas when you're in a high-pressure situation or when you're around senior leaders. Maybe you find yourself overthinking how you want to express yourself and overanalyzing what you're going to say, or maybe you're even overanalyzing what you already said and ruminating over how you could have said it better or how you don't think that you sounded good. All of these experiences that I'm describing are probably much more common than you think they are. When I was in my 9-to-5 career, I struggled with these things enormously. I experienced so much internal emotional turmoil as I was going through this process of finding my voice and building confidence as a leader. So you're not alone if you experience these things. And even more importantly, these are obstacles that you can evolve past. And one of the things that will help you evolve past these obstacles is understanding what it is that is keeping you stuck. As a coach, I've worked with roughly 200 professional women, and I have seen over and over that when you are struggling to have that confidence at work, the reason why typically falls into one of 4 buckets. In today's episode, I'm going to teach you what those 4 buckets are so that you can self-diagnose why you are stuck, and most importantly, I'm going to illuminate the solution so you can begin to understand how you can get past the obstacles that are keeping you from feeling confident and how you can develop that unstoppable, confident, polished voice that you so deeply desire. I am so excited to empower you with a deeper understanding of yourself and a deeper understanding of what your unique path to a confident, powerful voice will look like. So with that, let's dive into the episode, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so I'm going to be walking you through the 4 big obstacles that I see keeping professional women stuck when they are trying to find that confident voice. And for each one, I'm going to share some of the common symptoms of that obstacle so you can self-diagnose whether that is one of the obstacles that applies to you. So obstacle number 1 is something that I refer to as getting stuck internally. Here are some of the symptoms of this obstacle, and if these are symptoms you relate to, then this obstacle applies to you. So number 1 is you rehearse what you are going to say in your head over and over, trying to get the words just right. And sometimes you get so stuck in your head that the moment passes and you don't end up contributing or being a part of the conversation at all. Number 2, you get so wrapped up in your own thoughts, in your own mental rehearsal, that you sometimes miss what is happening in the conversation around you, and you struggle to stay present, and you struggle to listen to what others are saying. Not because you don't care or because you're inconsiderate, but because you're very much stuck in your own thoughts about what you're going to say. Number 3, you frequently question whether your ideas make sense, whether they're good enough to share. And number 4, when you hear other people share ideas that sound really smart or really impressive, you often use that as evidence against yourself and evidence that your idea wasn't good. And that can cause you to hide even more and retreat even more deeply into your own mind. Now, the reason that I call this obstacle getting stuck internally is because what is happening is you are getting stuck in your own thoughts. And you get so stuck in your own thoughts that typically you don't end up saying the thing that you were planning to say. The reason this is such a stubborn pattern to break out of is because it functions like one of those finger traps. Have you ever gotten one of those toy finger traps? They're made out of interwoven bamboo, and it's kind of like this cylinder, and you put your fingers into the finger trap. And if you try to pull your fingers out of the finger trap just gets tighter and more stuck on your fingers. Whereas when you stop pulling on the finger trap, it loosens and you can actually get your fingers out of the finger trap. Overthinking and over-rehearsing functions in a very similar way. When you are sitting in a meeting room with your colleagues and you're feeling intimidated or uncertain, it can feel in that moment like the best solution is for you to plan and rehearse what you're about to say. But that is similar to you pulling on the finger trap. Even though it feels like the right solution, it ends up making the problem worse. It takes you out of the present moment, which means you can't actually engage meaningfully in the conversation. And it often takes you deeper into the worry and the anxiety that you are experiencing. So at this point, you might be wondering, okay, if overthinking and over-rehearsing is just making it worse, what do I do to make it better? And the answer to that is to focus on navigating the emotions that you are feeling instead of focusing on getting the words right. Typically, when we go into overthinking and over-rehearsing, we are doing that in response to a difficult emotional experience that we are having. So typically, we are feeling either afraid, worried, anxious about speaking up and sharing our thoughts, or we might be feeling exposed and vulnerable and afraid that people will judge us. And when we feel that discomfort, our brain often makes an incorrect leap. And what our brain does is it says, wow, I feel uncertain. I'm afraid people will judge me. Let me make sure to rehearse and get the words right to make this uncomfortable feeling go away. The problem is rehearsing and getting the words right typically doesn't calm those emotions. In fact, sometimes it can make them grow even bigger. What we want to do instead is we want to learn to navigate through those emotions with greater strength and greater flexibility. So instead of us thinking to ourselves, if I just get the words right, then this feeling will go away, the thought process that we want to work on is it's normal that I feel this way, but I am strong enough to share my voice and be part of the conversation anyway. Notice how in this instance, I'm not trying to make the emotion go away by getting the words perfectly. Instead, I am affirming to myself that I am strong and resilient enough to join this conversation, even if it feels scary or intimidating. If we are in a perpetual pattern of trying to avoid discomfort by getting the words perfect and rehearsing them in our mind, then we never actually learn to navigate the discomfort. In a way, we are reinforcing a sense of fragility, a belief that we cannot handle that level of vulnerability or that level of exposure. Whereas when we practice taking the action and speaking up, even if it feels emotionally challenging, we become more adept at facing that emotion. And over time, that difficult emotion starts to shrink. And the situations that used to feel really difficult and overwhelming for us start to feel more manageable. This is why it is so worth it to develop this muscle of learning to speak up and make your voice heard even when it feels scary. Because the more you do that, the less scary those situations feel over time. And I'm sure you know that the less scary those situations feel, the more that you are going to be able to handle and take on as a leader. So that is bucket number 1, which is getting stuck internally. Okay, so bucket number 2 is something that I call real-time self-criticism. This is where you criticize everything you're saying as you are listening to those words come out of your mouth. So as you are talking, you might have thoughts like, that sounded stupid. Why did you say it that way? You're talking way too fast. People aren't listening to you. This is sounding awkward. You might be having some variation of these thoughts, or you might find yourself very fixated on things like the tone of your voice, how quickly or slowly you're talking, the sound of your voice, people's facial expressions. And as this is happening, and as your mind continually picks apart and criticizes everything that you're saying, it becomes increasingly difficult to concentrate on what you're saying, which impacts how smoothly you're delivering your ideas. And as you struggle to deliver your ideas smoothly, that just gives your brain even more fuel to say, see, you're doing this wrong, or see, you're messing this up. Now, if this is something you experience, I just want to reassure you that this is normal, and this is one of the most common things that I help my clients with. Nothing is wrong with you. This is a very common growing pain that happens when you are expanding as a leader. Now, I want to briefly talk through why you might get stuck in this pattern and how you can get out of this pattern. The reason you might be stuck in this pattern is because what often happens is we notice that we don't like the way the words are coming out of our mouth, and we think to ourselves, I'm not very good at speaking. I need to work on my communication skills. And we assume that the solution is to build out our executive communication skills. And you might even hear me say that, and you might be thinking, yeah, Jess, that is the solution. What do you mean that's not the solution? So what I want to offer is that if the problem is a very loud internal self-criticism that is nitpicking everything you say, no amount of communication skills is going to make that self-criticism go away. Typically, when we experience that self-criticism, it's not a communication skills problem, it's an internal psychological problem. There is no amount of communication skills that can overcome that intensely self-critical lens. If our pattern is to criticize ourselves as soon as we speak, we will do that regardless of how good or not good our speaking is. So the solution here is not necessarily to improve our communication skill. Our solution here is to learn to become more aware of this self-critical monologue and to develop the ability to separate ourselves from it psychologically rather than get wrapped up in it. As we learn to do that, it becomes easier to be present. It becomes easier to forgive ourselves if we make little mistakes or fumbles while we're speaking. And as we make this shift, we tend to feel more present, more liberated, more comfortable in our own skin. So that is bucket number 2, which is real-time self-criticism. We are going to take a super quick break, and then I'm going to tell you about buckets number 3 and 4. Building a confident voice at work isn't just about learning communication skills. It's about developing the mindset and emotional resilience you need to feel bold and powerful when you're in a room full of smart, accomplished leaders. If you're ready to go beyond the tactics and do the deep inner work you need to find your voice in those intimidating rooms, then my signature program, The Art of Speaking Up Academy, was made for you. In this intimate group coaching program, you're going to learn the foundations of executive communication and you will do the inner work to build genuine, lasting self-confidence. If you are ready for real transformation and change, make sure to add yourself to the waitlist because those on the waitlist get special bonuses and first dibs at early enrollment. To join the waitlist, click the link in the show notes or go to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy. And now let's get back to the episode. So now we're going to get into the third and fourth obstacles that prevent you from having a confident voice at work. Obstacle number 3 is a skills gap. This just means that you don't yet have the foundational executive communication skills that you need to know how to package your ideas and articulate your thoughts effectively. Now, before I go deeper into obstacle number 3, I want to clarify something super important. So when I talked about obstacle number 2, real-time self-criticism, I explained to you that a lot of times when we're criticizing the words that are coming out of our mouth, we assume that the solution there is just to improve our communication skills. And as I was explaining that to you, I told you that the solution is not to improve your communication skills. The solution is to build the psychological muscle of not getting sucked into self-criticism when you are speaking. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't need any communication skills at all. It just means that people often jump to the conclusion that the answer must always be that they need better communication skills. And sometimes that solution is mismatched with the problem. If we are experiencing an emotional problem or a psychological problem, typically the solution in that case is an emotional solution or a psychological solution as opposed to a skills-based solution. That said, there might actually be a gap in someone's executive communication skills. So it is possible that you do need to develop your communication skills. It's just important to make sure that you aren't assuming that communication skills are always the answer to any sort of struggle with your voice or with speaking up, because it's just more nuanced than that. With that said, the third obstacle is a gap in your communication skills, and I want to share with you some of the symptoms and signs that this is an obstacle that applies to you. So number 1, you struggle to structure what you want to express, which can sometimes cause you to ramble or jump around when you're sharing your ideas. Number 2, you struggle to narrow in on the key idea that you are trying to share, so your communication sometimes feels unclear or muddled. Number 3, you might struggle with over-explaining or including too much detail. Number 4, you feel unsure about how to change the way you speak when you're talking to a more senior audience. Number 5, you often talk in circles, you struggle to be pointed and direct. And number 6, sometimes when you finish speaking, you're unsure if what you shared was clear and understood by your audience or stakeholders. If these traits feel true, then that is a sign that there's also an opportunity to develop your communication skills. Now, of all of the different obstacles, this one is the most straightforward, it's the most obvious, and it's typically one that people are most aware of. So of all of the obstacles, this one is the least likely to come as a surprise to you. Now, when it comes to developing your executive communication skills, number 1, I'm going to link in the show notes one of my best overview episodes that teaches you the foundations of executive communication. But number 2, something that is really important to do if you want to get good at this is to not just learn the foundations of executive communication, but also to practice them. Anytime I teach my clients an executive communication framework inside the Art of Speaking Up Academy, I always give them the opportunity to practice it multiple times so that it can start to feel familiar, because it can be really challenging for us to learn something new and then go out and try it for the first time in a high stakes, high pressure situation. So as you're building out your executive communication toolkit, just make sure that you are giving yourself space to practice new ways of expressing your ideas. Even if that means you have to feel super silly and stand in front of the mirror and practice saying something in a different way, I guarantee you won't feel silly when you find yourself sitting in a real work meeting, feeling ready and confident to communicate powerfully because you were willing to practice it in front of the mirror. So that is obstacle number 3, which is a skills gap in executive communication. And now we are on to the final obstacle, obstacle number 4, which is a leadership identity problem. This is one that most people are not aware of. So here's how you know if you have a leadership identity problem. Number 1, you think that people with bigger titles or more years of experience know more than you. Number 2, you defer to people who have bigger titles or more years of experience when you're in the room with them. So you expect them to bring the thought leadership. Number 3, you don't think of yourself as a leader. You might be holding on to an older identity as someone more junior, and you might not even be super junior in your career. You just may have not yet let go of that old identity, and you might not be caught up to the present moment and caught up to the reality that you are operating and working at a leadership level. Another symptom of this is if you start to beat yourself up anytime someone who is a super high up leader says something very impressive or sophisticated or smart. If whenever they do that, you start thinking, wow, I could never speak like that. I could never sound like them. I am not as good as them. That is another sign that this obstacle applies to you. And the final sign that this obstacle applies to you is that you don't think of yourself as a peer when you are in the room with people who are at a higher level than you. Now, you might be thinking, of course I don't think of myself as a peer, Jess. I'm not a peer. These people are more experienced than me. And if you have that thought, this for sure applies to you. Just because someone in a company is above you and is not technically your peer doesn't mean that you can't walk into the room with the confidence, the thought process, the identity, and the determination of someone who is a peer. Regardless of whether or not we are actually a peer of everyone in the room, we decide what attitude and what energy we are going to demonstrate when we are in that room. And we can choose to have the attitude and energy of someone who sits below them in the organization, or we can choose to have the attitude and energy of a peer. And whatever we choose is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we enter the room with the attitude and the identity of someone below them, then we won't speak up, we won't share our thought leadership, and we won't get recognized, and we won't become a peer of theirs. We will stay stagnant in the organization. But if we walk into the room with the attitude and identity of a peer and we act as if we are their peer, they will hear our thought leadership. They will be far more impressed by us. And that is what is going to help us eventually become a peer. Now, one of the reasons that people get really stuck in this is because when people are experiencing a leadership identity problem, they will typically misdiagnose it as a knowledge problem. They will go into rooms with higher up leaders and they won't feel like they belong in the room. And their brain, again, will make an incorrect assumption and they will think to themselves, I don't feel like I belong in this room. It must be because I'm missing knowledge. Let me make sure that for the next meeting, I've reviewed everything. I'm prepared for every possible question I could get asked, and I have all of the knowledge. And that solution ends up not working because it was never a knowledge problem to begin with. The confidence that you feel in a room has almost nothing to do with the amount of knowledge and preparation you are bringing into the room. And it has everything to do with how much you see yourself as a leader. And the way that we know that this is true is we know that a strong, confident, effective leader can walk into any room, even a room where they lack knowledge and expertise, and can still feel confident to be a voice in that room. It is truly not about gathering the most knowledge. It is about learning to have that same thought process that a confident leader would have, which is that I am valuable in this room because of my intellect, my resourcefulness, my problem solving, and all of the determination that I bring. And that has nothing to do with knowledge. And so often, people get stuck on an endless treadmill of acquiring knowledge and over-preparing for meetings, and it never results in the confidence they are wanting because it was never a knowledge problem in the first place. So if you relate to this, and if you're feeling like you have a leadership identity problem, one of the best things that you can possibly do is let go of the impulse to over-prepare and gather all of the knowledge, and instead practice feeling the confidence of a leader and taking the actions that a leader would take. So in summary, the 4 obstacles are: number 1, getting stuck internally; number 2, real-time self-criticism; number 3, a skills gap; and number 4, a leadership identity problem. Now, like I've been mentioning throughout this episode, all of these obstacles are obstacles that you can overcome. This is what I work with my clients on every single day. And if you are ready to let go of the self-criticism, to develop that leadership identity, to learn and practice those foundational executive communication skills, these are the exact pieces that I help you with inside my signature program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy. If you are ready to get serious about your professional development and you want to finally develop that lasting confidence and that powerful voice that gets you noticed and respected as a leader, I want to invite you to come join me in the next cohort of this program. The absolute best way to do that is to add yourself to the waitlist by clicking the link in the show notes. When you join the waitlist, you will be first to find out when early enrollment opens. And when you enroll early, you get to secure your spot in advance. You don't have to worry about the cohort selling out, which happens very frequently. And even better, when you enroll early, you typically get a bonus included in your Art of Speaking Up Academy enrollment. Sometimes the bonus is a free bonus workshop hosted by me. Sometimes the bonus is a free private session with me. And when you join the waitlist and you enroll early, you will get that bonus included complimentary in your Academy enrollment. To join the waitlist, click the link in the show notes or go to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy. Thank you so freaking much for tuning into today's episode, and I'll catch you next week. Bye!